Welcome back. We're talking about oral work, and this covers everything in grade 10 and 11 and 12 because you are expected to speak in all those grades. We're talking about preparing for a formal speech. Let's have a look at step 2. Remember that you must show that you understand the audience to whom you are speaking and why you are speaking. That is the context. You must use correct grammar and the right language for the kind of speech you're giving and for the audience. So I was talking about the student who said, I'm going to do my 5 most embarrassing moments. Is it okay if I give a humorous speech? Of course it's okay. We've talked about the difficulties of humor, but the benefits of humor is that everybody enjoys a humorous speech. So that's great. You can be humorous. Remember, this is a formal, prepared English oral examination. So be careful that your humor is appropriate, but of course use humor. Clear delivery. We were talking a little bit about this in the previous segment. You also need to look at suitable ways of speaking and body language. Be careful of gestures. Maybe a small gesture, but nothing too big. You are speaking. You are not an actor on a stage performing a part. You are somebody talking. You're engaging your audience. You're getting your message across. Practice. I've said this before. I say it again. A good speech requires practice, and not once, practice many times. When we're talking about practicing and presenting, you demonstrate practicing and oral presentation skills. You use the appropriate forms of address for your audience. You show an awareness of audience. For example, you might like to use a rhetorical question or repetition. And not you might like to use pause. You absolutely must use pause. Now, a student asked me today, how long do I pause for? Well, it depends on what effect you're trying to create. If you've asked a question and you want the audience to think about it, then pause, look at them while they are thinking about what you've asked them to think about. And then continue your speech. Maybe you've made an important point. Mwah! Now you go back to looking at your notes, so you allow your audience to think about it, and you look up and you start your next point. That pause is there to let your audience know, I'm moving on. So it depends on what you are pausing for, but you must use pause. And I've just used pause. You must use pause. Why am I using pause? To get the point across. Not long pauses with emphasis, but short pauses. Let's just talk about a rhetorical question for a moment. A rhetorical question is one that does not need an answer because the answer is obvious, or, and this is usual, the speaker is trying to manipulate the hearer into answering in the implied way. The example that I always give is saying to a class, do you expect me to teach you while you're talking? That's not a question I want answered. I'm trying to persuade the class to keep quiet. I'm using it as a persuasive technique, not as a question at all. Show an awareness of situation. So when can I use formal English? When can I use informal? And remember, colloquial means spoken or informal English. Can I use slang? Oh, I'm not very happy about slang. I really think you should keep slang out of your formal English examination orals. Remember, you can express and support your own opinion in a discussion and interaction. That can also be part of your oral. Always use the correct language structures and conventions for whatever it is that you're doing. And then we're talking about appropriate verbal and non-verbal techniques. Tone. Tone is the feeling in your voice. Voice projection. People can't hear you, they can't evaluate you. Modulation. Don't yell at people all the way through the speech. Change your voice. Volume. Sometimes a little bit louder, sometimes a little bit softer. Your pace. Generally, I would say slow down. Everybody goes too fast. Your phrasing. Where do you pause? Where do you emphasize? Your eye contact. You must look at your audience. Your facial expressions. That's all you've got. Your gestures and body language. Hold yourself properly. Don't rock. Don't swing around while you are speaking. Appropriate, clear intonation. Pronounce the words correctly. Modulate it for meaning. So sometimes you're going to get tougher, sometimes more gentle, depending on the meaning. Again, look at the kinds of things that you do. You need to look at yourself in a mirror, and maybe you see yourself playing with your hair. Then you know, oh, no, I mustn't do that. Maybe you see that you don't look up enough. What are your problems? Practice. Get feedback. Talk to your mother, your father, your sister, your granny. The dog and the cat you can practice speaking to, but they can't give you feedback. Practice, improve, make sure you give the best possible speech. And we're going to continue to look at this in our next segment.